When I did the full moon in Virgo video a few days ago, 5 or 6 days ago, I titled it A Pregnant Pause, and little did we know that the pause would be quite so extensive. At around the time of the full moon, Mercury was stationary. So the first thing I want to say in this video is that if there was anything that came through or that was some sort of a culmination around the time of that full moon, it's very likely that the reward of it or the result of it is going to take some time getting to you, because Mercury was stationary. That's what informed this full moon. The effect of the full moon is going to be around for maybe another 10 days or so, along with the new moon that occurred in Pisces. And at that time, Mercury was retrograde. So there's a certain amount of, I'm not going to use the word, this video is going to go from the micro to the macro. So we are going to address where we all are at with the personal planets, and then I'm going to talk about coronavirus in a second as well. So just bear with me, because it feels weird to talk about the personal without addressing the elephant in the room that we're all contending with in some way, shape, or form, which is giving us, again, a sense of pause right now, where it's just like, we thought we were going to start moving forward. Are we going to move forward? When are we going to move forward? How is this looking? Where is this going? Let's start with the micro. If around the full moon something came to a crest or a culmination, let's say someone offered to engage you for some services, relevant because so many of us are thinking about our income. There is, because let's say someone made you an offer, something came to a culmination, there's an agreement that's ready to go. Remember two things. Mercury went direct, then it went retrograde on February the 17th and direct again on March the 10th. And so now for the third time, it's going to go over certain degrees. And as it starts to pick up momentum, and I really look at March the 16th as a time when it starts to gain some velocity and enters Pisces again, because it went direct in Pisces, retrograded back into Aquarius, March the 10th, direct again, March the 16th into Pisces, and over some of those degrees that it went over. As it does that, things that we have thought were done deals, or we were considering or investigating or thinking about, now finally do gather the momentum on a personal level. Certain things, especially where they have to do with, to some extent, the sign of Aquarius, but especially the sign of Pisces in your chart, will gather momentum, and action and communication will be taken. The fact that you may be quarantined, the fact that you may be actively practicing social distancing, the fact that other things might be at a bit of a standstill or an increasing standstill, especially as this week progresses, especially as we head towards the time before the new moon in Aries on March the 24th. So especially as we head towards March the 20th and 23rd, and more on that in a second, as different things show up that continue to cause challenges or problems or crises, and certainly feeling like there won't be enough groceries, or if we're all put under some sort of lockdown in a certain geography, those are crises. But the fact that many of us are fortunate enough to be in our own environments and relatively safe, even if finances prove to be a crunch, I'll come to that in a second, means that certain types of action can be taken. And indeed, a lot of people are posting around the fact that you can talk to friends, and there's over the phone, and there's plays that can be read and different things that can be done. I actually think that it might be time. Forward movement can mean that there are things that we have not had time to take care of that start to get taken care of. Certain things related to the sign of Pisces and where it sits in your chart and what house it occupies and what that house governs will start to get taken care of as you head towards Monday and beyond. No question about it. And in some ways, whatever is happening that is cutting other things out may give you a bit of an opening to contend with some of this stuff. Not every geography right now is impacted in the same way. So for certain people, there's a sense of forward momentum. If you're in India right now and you aren't dealing with certain things like people rushing to get groceries or practicing social isolation, or something along those lines, is in an as pronounced a manner as at least we're starting to feel a little bit on the West Coast here, and I think New Yorkers are feeling it very strongly. Not going to mention Europe, where in certain countries the lockdown is even more severe. It's Mercury will start to gather momentum. Now, if around the time of full moon about a week ago, as I said, things came to a culmination and someone said, hey, I'm going to do this with you, I'm going to get this done with you, we're going to do this, we're going to have those things, because that full moon happened while Mercury was stationary, will take a while to get going. Indeed, if there are plans that have been in place and there was a period of forward momentum from January to the middle of February when Mercury went retrograde, but even between February and March the 10th, and we're expecting to move forward with those things, we will be moving forward with them. Could there be a postponement? Yes, but it doesn't mean that things are entirely scrapped just yet. This week is going to be crucial. As astrologers have been looking at the coronavirus, some people are pointing to the fact that we have an interesting set of events coming up. The planet Mars conjuncts Jupiter, conjuncts Pluto, and then Jupiter and Pluto conjunct each other. And so we have the planet of action and drive, but also war and conflict. Injury conjuncting Jupiter, which is a blessing of a planet, but is also a planet of endings and new beginnings, and also expands everything it touches. And then you've got Pluto, the planet of death and transformation, meeting up before the Aries full moon on the 24th. Technically, Jupiter and Pluto meet up in the beginning of April 10th, I think, or April 4th, April 10th, I think. But they're already getting closer and closer to each other, and it's not the date of the conjunction that matters, but it's the days leading up to it. So on a positive side, is there some sort of a vaccine, or is there something that Mars does that attacks this particular pandemic, or is there something that occurs that expands it in a way that it affects us all even more? We're going to need to wait and see how this develops. By the time we're dealing with the Aries new moon on a personal level, Mercury is moving forward. It's time to understand what it is that we can do and control and what we cannot. And there will be times when the crises will hit us. But it is not a time of suspended action, increasingly. The next week has a certain flavor, and indeed until the beginning of April has a certain flavor, and then after that, things become a little bit more normal. Let's just use that terminology. So, is it all hands on deck? Yes. Are all hands supposed to be on a steering wheel? Yes. Are you supposed to be watchful and on your guard? Yes. Because things may develop in such a way that impact your plans, and especially cause postponements or delayed results in some way. But even that is not 100% of the cases. As this week progresses and the week after March the 24th progresses, certain things that currently are suspended or have postponements or delays will start to see some sort of movement and decisive decision making. At the same time, the primary purpose of this video is to say that forward movement and momentum is upon us, and if there are certain tasks that are taken away from us because we can't get to them, we can't go to work necessarily, there are other tasks that have been sitting on the back burner that do constitute forward momentum in certain parts of our lives and our charts that can take over and can start to be attended to for at least a brief period of time. A lot of this video feels like it would apply to people who still will not feel the financial impact of having to be at home or having to be quarantined or having to be locked down, because they have the luxury of either being on paid leaves or having some sort of savings or something along those lines in order to be able to shift their attention to other things that can get done now that there are certain things that are put on hold. However, this will end up applying to everyone. So if people are feeling the financial crunch because they either do gig-related work or they do work that is severely impacted or had work lined up that has been canceled, artists, people working on contract, then it creates another set of forward momentum with regard to what is going to take up the slack, what other actions need to be taken. Broadly speaking, the kind of forward movement that we expected or experienced in January and early February after March the 16th starts to move up again. We may, for another week, week and a half, 2 weeks, experience some pauses or postponements or suspension. It's just the last new moon that we're under was when Mercury was retrograde. But as Mercury starts to go over the same degrees that it was gone over twice already, when it was direct and retrograde and now again direct for the third time, greater clarity, greater information, but also decisive communication action will occur in those areas that have been affected by that retrograde. As far as where the sign of Capricorn is in your chart, where this Mars, Jupiter, Pluto conjunction is occurring, take a look at it. Just see where it sits in your chart. But from a general perspective, let us continue to see what this next week to 2 weeks brings, week and a half continues to bring. Because I think that in some ways will be more of a deciding factor with regard to how it is that this global pandemic is affecting all of us and it continues to affect our forward movement. Now, one more thing. The week after a full moon where we are for the next couple of days may in its own way have been astonishingly productive. It always is. And you may say, how is it productive? I had to sit at home and do this or do that. Ask yourself if you haven't been in action in a non-hysterical or non-intense way, even as you've been dealing with this, with whatever's been thrown at you. Being productive could mean going to a grocery store and stocking up on things, preparing for quarantine, whatever it is that needs to be done. The energy right after a full moon has a sense of balance to it, that the energy after a new moon as it accelerates to a full moon, and the week before a new moon does not necessarily have. Now, in a few days' time, in 3 or 4 days' time, we will enter the last week before the new moon, and at that point in time our energy will subside. I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that we may, as we are going through this new moon in Pisces while Mercury was retrograde period, and as we bring that to a close because Mercury was retrograde then and the full moon we had during this period, Mercury was stationary, I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing to be a little bit more retiring or find that your energy is a little bit more depleted and find that you are a little less productive in very normal ways as you head towards March the 24th. There may be a need to take in information, there may be a need to rest, there may be a need to reflect, but I still feel that there are things that can get taken care of, particularly where the sign of Pisces is in your chart and what it stands for, that you may have an opening to do more decisively, given the fact that other things are either being postponed, paused, delayed, or even in some cases potentially cancelled. So I know that when I was thinking about this video I was going to title it Make Hay, and I still am, but it's a little misleading because the full quote is make hay while the sun shines, and the sun isn't exactly shining. It literally is not shining now, not only because it's nighttime, but also because it was a rainy day. You know, it's been a few rainy days in Los Angeles. And the sun is not shining, generally speaking, because of the pandemic. But the idea of making hay, however it applies to you with regard to what it is that can get done, that has been sitting on the back burner perhaps, or has needed attention and you haven't been able to get to it, as more clarity emerges, particularly where the sign of Pisces is. I know I repeat myself in these videos, but it's helpful. Where crises occurred in 2015, 2016, and around the same time last year, what you're spiraling out of, you may find that you have the emotional capacity and drive, but especially the ability to communicate, whether it is articulate, process, whether it is introverted communication or extroverted communication, internal processing and transactions or external processing and transactions, there might be the time and capacity to take some action there. By all means do so. At the same time, we're going to wait and see what it is that this week, and particularly as we head to March the 23rd and then April the 10th, bring in terms of developments as far as the pandemic is concerned. And if we are temporarily waylaid, so be it. But the intensity of this Mars-Jupiter-Pluto conjunction aside, which we have all been waiting for and wondering what it means, and here it might be, astrologers, we have a tendency to go back and look at things that we haven't predicted. You know, we have a tendency to want to justify ourselves that everything shows up in a chart. But the fact of the matter is, everything is not known. Everything is not clear. If there were astrologers or seers who knew everything or saw everything, or if you could predict everything that was going to happen in your life, our lives would look very different. So our hands remain on the steering wheel, and my suggestion would be to not get too thrown by the delays and the postponements at present, and even in general. They may be creating a portal or an opportunity to take care of certain other things. And not everything that is cancelled for good. As the planets, particularly Mercury, picks up speed, and as we get past this intense conjunction that occurs by the middle of April, let's see where we're at. But certainly the next 3 or 4 days might be a really great time to continue to be in action, and then rest, and then after March the 24th, pick up the action again. And indeed, after the March 24th new moon, we're not going to be looking back at that point in time. The energy is going to be more forward moving at that point in time. And forward moving is not always happy forward moving. It can be challenging forward moving, or it can be sad forward moving, but it's not quite, I don't know what to, like we're completely stuck or we're in this pause mode. The pregnant pause will subside, and I actually feel that it'll start to subside even more by the 16th, in a couple of days' time, because we will start to be in action over certain things that we now have the time and bandwidth to be in action around. And then as we head into this new moon cycle on March the 24th, and as we head past April the 10th, let's see what starts to get back on our calendars. Okay. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel or share this video if you found it useful. Comment on it, like it if you want to, if there's something relevant you want to share, if you like it. There's a bell icon next to the subscribe button in YouTube. You can click on that. I've never done a video this late. I hope it shows up okay. There's a bell icon next to the subscribe button that you can click on to be notified whenever I do new videos. And my contact information is in the description area. So if you want to contact me for a reading, or if you want me to make an easy to read version of your chart so you can see which signs are in which houses, you can contact me there to inquire about rates. You will need to know your birth time if you want me or anyone to make you a version of your chart, so just know that in advance. All right, over and out. More videos coming soon. We have a few shifts coming up that will be worth talking about as we continue to monitor where we are at onwards. Thank you.